In 1961, the United States Supreme Court, in a ruling entitled Torcaso versus Watkins, identified humanism, secular humanism, as a religion. And in fact, in a footnote of that particular court case, which was decided June 19th, 1961, we're told, among religions in this country which do not teach what would generally be considered a belief in the existence of God, we call that atheism, are Buddhism, Taoism, ethical culture, secular humanism. Now, I know this is an important quote because the humanists themselves over the years have identified this as one of the great mistakes of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Clearly, the American government's understanding of religion has broadened enough to include non-theistic religions like secular humanism. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has not been consistent in applying this definition to its present interpretation of the First Amendment. If the No Establishment Clause of the First Amendment really means that there should be a wall of separation between church and state, why are only theistic religions being forced out of the public square?
The original writers of the Constitution in no way intended to keep the influence of God out of the life of the state. They intended to keep the long arm of the state out of the affairs of the church.
If secular humanism is a religion, something the U.S. Supreme Court has proclaimed, and something countless secular humanists insist, why is it allowed in our public schools?
There is religion in the classroom. It's just not the Christian religion. And the Christian religion has been eradicated under the guise that it is a religion, when in fact out, or in really through the back door comes another religion called secular humanism.
Why are Christianity and other theistic religions banned from public schools, while the religion of secular humanism monopolizes the classroom? The only explanation yet offered is that secular humanism is value neutral, a worldview that inherently tolerates all other worldviews. If this were true, why do secular humanist educators consistently attack the Christian worldview, even going so far as to erase most traces of Christian influence on history, science, and various other subjects? Further, secular humanists preach a faith every bit as dogmatic as Christianity. Moral relativism is foundational for secular humanist ethics. Spontaneous generation and evolution are basic to their biology. Naturalism is foundational to their philosophy, and atheism is their theological doctrine. Paul Kurtz, editor of Free Inquiry and publisher of Prometheus Books, has recently argued that secular humanism is not a religion, and that every secular humanist who claims his worldview is religious is mistaken. Known as today's leading secular humanist, Kurtz drafted the Humanist Manifesto II in 1973, where he disregards the belief in a supreme being and completely embraces a naturalistic worldview.
To have a worldview doesn't necessarily mean that it's religious. But now, it seems to me the only appropriate worldview that secular humanists hold, perhaps a better term is scientific humanists, that's what I want to defend, is a view based on the sciences. It's the frontiers of sciences. You ask the question, what are human beings? The answers should come from genetics, biology, the social sciences, the behavioral sciences, the historical sciences. What is nature? The answer to that is astronomy, geology, the natural sciences. So the worldview that I would advocate is a changing worldview based upon the best scientific tested theories of the day. And I don't see where that's religious. And not at all. It's not religious.
The assertion that secular humanism is not a religion is doubly flawed. First, secular humanists cannot provide a definition of religion that excludes secular humanism, but includes other non-theistic religions. Secondly, the majority of secular humanists do not reject the label religion when describing humanism in today's culture.
Now, in the past, Paul Kurtz recognized that it was a good and useful strategy, he even uses the word strategy, good and useful strategy to define secular humanism within the bounds of religion, to say that it is a religion and that it's religious in its character because of people's fervent commitment to these things. But today he says that strategy is not very helpful.
You can't use the term religion, in my view, so broadly that it applies to everything and therefore nothing. So, all right, so secular humanism has a cosmic outlook, a worldview, and it also has an ethical set of values, and that's central, ethical values. I use the term eupraxiphy. I've brought them in because some people are confusing this. They're calling secular humanism a religion. I think that's a mistake.
I think it should be of interest to us to see that when Paul Kurtz wants to define secular humanism in such a way as to say that it is not a religion, in order to describe it with a certain term, instead of using religion or worldview or something else, he has to invent a new word. That new word is eupraxiphy.
I'm a eupraxifer. That means, EU means good. This is a Greek roots I coined. Praxis means practice. Sophia means wisdom, but by that I mean primarily scientific wisdom, philosophically interpreted. So I have a theory of the good life, in terms of which I live the good life, and also a cosmic outlook, interpreting nature in the light of the sciences. Is that religious? I don't think so.
He says humanism combines, as I will argue, a method of inquiry, which is basically science, a cosmic worldview, interesting, something not derived from science, a life stance, something I don't see implied by studying amoebas or galaxies, and a set of social values. Where does he get those social values? He cannot appeal to science as grounding for these things, which indicates that his position, again, is not neutral.
In a Free Inquiry article written in 1987 by Paul Kurtz, he clearly identifies humanism as a religion.
Kurtz says the organized humanist movement is put in a quandary. It's put in a quandary because three of the humanist organizations admit themselves that they are religious. And he identifies them. The Fellowship of Religious Humanism, the American Ethical Union, and the Society for Humanistic Judaism, he says, all admit that they are religious. And then he dropped the bomb. He says even the American Humanist Association has a religious tax exemption. In other words, the AHA is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization in the same identical classification as the First Baptist Church of Dallas, Texas. A few years later, Paul Kurtz, in another article in Free Inquiry magazine, in fact, the fall of '91, says the following: the American Humanist Association still retains its religious exemption, despite an erroneous 1990 announcement that its tax status had changed. In any event, the American Humanist Association continues to emphasize that its counselor program is religious and performs pastoral and ministerial duties. In other words, what he's saying is, even if it didn't have a religious 501c3 standing with the IRS, he says it's still performing ministerial and pastoral duties apart from that fact. So they're still in the ballpark called religion.
There is a crushing weight of evidence which supports the fact that secular humanism is a religion. In his book, Clergy in the Classroom, Dr. Noble examines the writings of many prominent secular humanists and experts in the field. His findings build a case in much the same way as a criminal case builds during a trial. The evidence leaves only one question unanswered. Why is the United States government allowing the next generation of youth to be indoctrinated by secular humanist clergy in the classroom?
For those who argue that humanism is not a religion, and that is a major issue today, even amongst the humanists. Free Inquiry has written numerous articles on the subject within the last few years. Our attitude is, let's go back to the foundation stone of humanism,